What if luck knocked on your door in a way you never imagined? Kathy, a 37-year-old cleaner, lived a life marked by routine and simplicity, sharing her days with Mark, her 45-year-old electrician husband. Despite a stable relationship, their lives were always filled with small financial and emotional challenges. When Kathy won the lottery with numbers she never believed would be drawn, she saw an opportunity to change her destiny. But instead of celebrating the win alongside Mark, she decided to keep it a secret, fueling a treacherous plan that would lead her down a path of deceit and disillusionment. Kathy had always dreamed of a better life, but the reality of cleaning and bills to pay bound her to a suffocating routine. While her friends talked about their achievements and travels, she felt trapped in an endless cycle. The idea of a multi-million-dollar prize seemed distant, almost like a mirage. However, when the lottery numbers aligned, her heart raced. It was her chance to leave everything behind, to break free from a marriage that no longer satisfied her. Determined to keep the fortune, Kathy began to weave a plan. She convinced Mark that the best thing for them would be to separate, manipulating the situation so that he couldn't claim anything. With a heavy heart but focused on her goal, Kathy kicked Mark out of the house, believing she was on her way to a life of luxury. However, life had other plans. Mark, heartbroken, found shelter at the neighbor Sarah's house, who, noticing his fragility, decided to investigate what was really happening. Sarah, with her sharp instincts, began to suspect Kathy's sudden divorce request. Upon discovering the truth about the lottery, she became an unexpected ally for Mark, helping him recover the winning ticket before Kathy could get her hands on it. What started as an ordinary day for Kathy quickly turned into a nightmare. When she finally tried to claim the prize, she was confronted with the reality that Mark had already been recognized as the true winner. The climax of the story unfolds in a public confrontation, where Kathy, filled with rage and despair, attempts to confront Mark and Sarah. In a dramatic twist, her actions lead her to a humiliation she could never have imagined. In the end, as Mark and Sarah come together to build a new life, Kathy finds herself trapped in her own traps and becomes embroiled in a desperate plan that culminates in her downfall. In this web of choices and consequences, the story explores themes of ambition, betrayal, and redemption, showing how the pursuit of wealth can transform not only lives but also hearts. What did Kathy truly learn throughout her journey? Life is more than money. It's about the relationships we build and the decisions we make. Kathy looked out the window as the rain fell, her thoughts swirling like the drops sliding down the glass. The lottery win that should have marked the beginning of a new life was becoming an increasingly heavy burden. The lies she had woven to keep her secret now surrounded her like a web, and guilt began to corrode her heart. Mark, her husband, was with Sarah, the neighbor who had always been so kind and understanding. The image of them together hurt her more than anything else. Kathy wanted to believe she had made the right decision by separating, but desperation made her doubt herself. Meanwhile, Mark was trying to pick up the pieces after the unexpected separation. He felt lost, unsure of how to move forward. Sarah's support was a relief amid the emotional chaos. She had always shared a sincere friendship with Mark, but now that bond was growing stronger as they shared their pain. Sarah, with her gentle nature, not only offered shelter but also a listening ear, helping him see a different future. Mark felt grateful, but the pain of betrayal still lingered, making each smile a reminder of what he had lost. Kathy, on the other hand, began to feel the pressure of the situation. The first time she tried to claim the prize, the lottery attendant looked at her with a doubtful expression. He asked to verify the documents. Her heart raced. It was the first major obstacle in her path. What if Mark decided to tell the truth? What if the lottery found out she had lied? Those questions haunted her as she tried to maintain a facade of confidence. The situation only worsened when a local journalist began investigating the story, drawing the community's attention to the scandal. Meanwhile, the friendship between Mark and Sarah deepened. Together, they began to plan how they could use the prize if Mark managed to recover it. Conversations about the future, although still tinged with sadness, brought a new perspective. Gradually, Mark began to see that life could be different, that he could be happy again. But the shadow of Kathy still loomed over him, and the memories of their tumultuous marriage were not easy to overcome. Kathy, in her desperate quest for control, started to distance herself from friends and family. She didn't want anyone to know about her betrayal. The people who had once supported her now seemed distant, and loneliness consumed her. The cleaning in her life was no longer just about work, it was an internal battle against her own demons. Each day that passed without telling Mark the truth made her feel more lost. In those moments of reflection, Kathy began to question her beliefs about what happiness and success meant. She had pursued money believing it would set her free, but now she found herself trapped in her own web. Emotional tension grew day by day. Kathy felt as if she were in a war against herself, torn between the ambition for a luxurious life and the desire to regain the love she had lost. Every time she saw Mark and Sarah together, the pain hit her like a blow, and anger turned into despair. How could she have let it all slip away? It was a question that tormented her, and as the truth drew closer, Kathy realized that the only way to free herself was to confront her fears. The difficulties she faced led her to a point of reflection. Kathy began to wonder if what she truly wanted was wealth or happiness. She realized that, to achieve true happiness, she would need to confront her flaws and perhaps ask for forgiveness. However, the weight of guilt and fear of consequences kept her paralyzed. The life she had dreamed of was slipping away like sand through her fingers, and the idea of starting anew seemed further away than ever. As complications mounted, Kathy found herself in a dilemma. The challenges forced her to confront not only her ambition but also her beliefs about love and loyalty. The friendship between Mark and Sarah challenged her to rethink her own worth and what truly mattered. What had seemed like a perfect plan was now turning into a nightmare, and Kathy found herself surrounded by difficult choices that would lead her down a path of redemption or ruin. What would she do next? The answer was unclear, but the journey was just beginning. Kathy was trapped in a cycle of anguish and confusion. The rain continued to fall outside, but inside her mind, an even more intense storm was brewing. The thought of facing Mark and telling the truth seemed increasingly distant. Each day that passed without her taking action left her more paralyzed. The weight of guilt suffocated her, and the moments of solitude became increasingly unbearable. She found herself reflecting in every drop sliding down the glass, as if each one represented a lost opportunity. Meanwhile, Mark tried to take a step forward, even though he was battling the pain of betrayal. Sarah, with her understanding nature, had become a valuable source of support. He felt torn. The friendship that blossomed between them made him feel alive again, but there was a knot in his chest he couldn't untie. The guilt of moving on without Kathy haunted him. At night, he would find himself staring at the ceiling, wondering if he could really be happy again. Sarah, sensing the internal conflict within Mark, tried to encourage him, but Kathy's shadow still loomed over them. Across the street, Kathy could not ignore the smiles spreading between Mark and Sarah. Every laugh that reached her was a cruel reminder of what she had lost. The pain transformed into anger, but it was not just anger towards Mark or Sarah, it was anger towards herself. She wondered how she had come to this point. The money that should have guaranteed her freedom now felt like a prison. The lies she had told to protect her secret were turning against her, and the pressure mounted day by day. The journalist who had started investigating the lottery story had become a tangible threat. Kathy could no longer ignore the rumors circulating around town. People began to ask about her sudden change in life, and suspicious glances became common. The fear of her truth being exposed consumed her. She felt trapped, as if she were in a maze with no way out. The idea that her life could be stripped bare before everyone terrified her. Over time, Kathy decided she needed a plan. She convinced herself that she could solve everything alone, without involving anyone. She began working on a new project, something that would give her a sense of control and distract her mind. But as the days passed, the pressure intensified. She found herself facing obstacles that left her distressed. Each small challenge felt like a mountain, and the lack of support left her increasingly exhausted. The project was not progressing as she had hoped, and frustration made her feel even more isolated. Mark, for his part, began to realize that his feelings for Sarah were changing. She was an incredible person, but Kathy's presence still followed him like a shadow. He felt guilty for starting to like someone new, but the connection he had with Sarah was undeniable. During a heartfelt conversation, Sarah encouraged him to let go of the past. "You deserve to be happy, Mark. Don't let what happened with Kathy stop you from moving forward," she said, holding his hand. Those words resonated deeply, but doubt still haunted him. Kathy, in her solitude, decided that she needed time to reflect. She distanced herself even further from friends and family, diving head. Kathy was in a moment of deep reflection when she received an unexpected message from Mark. He wanted to meet her. At first, her heart raced with nervousness and fear. The desire to tell the truth, to finally rid herself of the weight that oppressed her, fought against the urge to hide again. The rain continued to fall, but now it felt like a sign that things were about to change. At the cafe where they agreed to meet, Kathy arrived with her mind full of questions and insecurities. Mark was already there, looking out the window, lost in thought. When she approached, he turned, and for a moment, their eyes met. It was as if all the time they had spent apart disappeared. But the tension in the air was palpable, and Kathy felt the weight of the words she needed to say. "Hi, Kathy," Mark began, his voice mixing relief and apprehension. I just wanted to know how you are." She hesitated but saw that he genuinely cared. "I'm trying to deal with everything. Life has been complicated." Mark nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. They talked about the difficult days they were facing, but soon the conversation took a more serious turn. Mark took a deep breath and decided that he could no longer live in the shadow of guilt. "I'm trying to move on, but I feel like something still holds me back. What happened between us still weighs heavily." Mark's words hit Kathy like a punch to the stomach. The pain of betrayal, the guilt, and the confusion she had tried to hide were now exposed. But the truth she had kept within herself also wanted to come out. The internal battle consumed her, and in a moment of vulnerability, she decided she could no longer live with that secret. "Mark, I need to be honest with you," she said, her voice trembling. "There's something you don't know about me. Something that changed everything." He looked at her with a mix of confusion and expectation. Kathy told him about the lottery, how she had won a significant amount, and the decision she made to hide it from everyone. She spoke about the pressure and fear that led her to distance herself from him, as if each word was a form of liberation. With each sentence, it felt like part of the weight on her shoulders dissolved. Mark fell silent, processing the revelation. The emotions he had been holding, pain and betrayal, now mixed with a new understanding. It was as if a new layer of Kathy's story revealed itself before him. He realized that the guilt he felt for moving on was merely a reflection of the pain she also carried. "I didn't know, Kathy. I can't understand why you didn't tell me before," he responded, his voice heavy with emotion. "I thought you left me because of Sarah." Kathy felt a wave of sadness at the mention of Sarah. "It wasn't because of her, but because of me. I was so scared. The money I won, instead of bringing me happiness, only brought more confusion and fear. I didn't know how to deal with it." Mark felt a mix of anger and compassion. "You should have trusted me. We were together. I could have helped you." Mark's words resonated with Kathy, and she began to understand the depth of her failure. In her quest to protect herself, she had built a barrier between them. He wasn't the enemy, he was someone who could have been her support. And now, as she faced the truth, a new wave of regret washed over her. "I know, and I'm so sorry for that. I truly am," Kathy said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm trying to forgive myself, but it's hard." Mark moved closer, took her hand, and looked her in the eyes. "Maybe we can forgive each other. I don't want to lose you, but I also can't remain stuck in the past. We need to find a way to move forward, even if it means starting over." The conversation took her to a place she never imagined she would reach. It felt like a door had opened, offering her a new chance to rebuild not just her relationship with Mark, but also with herself. The pressure that had once suffocated her began to dissipate as she accepted her flaws and prepared for a new beginning. As they left the cafe, Kathy felt her internal storm starting to calm. She knew there were still many challenges ahead, but now she had the courage to face them. The journey of overcoming wouldn't be easy, but she was willing to try. And, above all, she was ready to leave the past behind and seek a more authentic and free future. Kathy walked out of the cafe feeling lighter in her heart, but her mind was still restless. The conversation with Mark had freed her from part of the weight she had been carrying, but the truth was that the journey was far from over. As she walked down the sidewalk, the rain was letting up, and she felt that the remaining drops were like tears flowing away, making space for something new. However, the feeling of freedom came with a new kind of anxiety. As she moved away from the cafe, Kathy realized that not only her relationship with Mark was at stake, but also her self-perception. The revelation about the lottery and the secret she had kept had distanced her from the life she once knew, and now she had to deal with the consequences of that. Images of her old life emerged in her mind, before the prize that had made her rich but also lonely and fearful. There were friends she hadn't seen in months, and the thought of reconnecting with them made her anxious. The first obstacle Kathy faced was her circle of friends. She decided to send messages to a few friends, but hesitated before hitting send. What if they judged her? What if they didn't understand her choices? Finally, she summoned the courage and sent a message to Clara, her childhood best friend. "Hi, Clara. Can we meet? I have some things to tell you." Sending the message was a small step, but for Kathy, it represented a significant change. When they met, Clara welcomed her with a tight hug. She realized that her friend was more concerned about Kathy's emotional state than about what had happened between them. During the meeting, Kathy opened up about what had happened, the guilt that consumed her, and the pressure she felt regarding the money. Clara listened attentively, and at the end, offered advice that Kathy didn't expect. "You need to give yourself some time. No one expected you to have all the answers right away." The conversation with Clara was a relief and brought a new perspective. Kathy realized that perhaps she didn't need all the answers right now. The idea that she could allow herself to feel and process her emotions was an important step. But still, the shadows of the past followed her. A new worry emerged: how to deal with the financial expectations that now felt so heavy. In the following days, Kathy decided to seek professional help. Scheduling a therapy session was a difficult decision, but she knew she needed support to confront her feelings and find a clear path forward. The first session was challenging, but by the end, she left with a sense that she was beginning to understand herself better. Discussing her insecurities and fears helped her structure her thoughts and see that even in her vulnerability, there was strength. However, not everything was being resolved. Mark, for his part, was also dealing with his own emotions. He struggled to be understanding, but the pain of betrayal was still present. In a text conversation, he expressed his frustration about how things had changed between them. Kathy realized that even though they had taken an important step, there was still a long way to go. With each passing day, Kathy tried to balance her desire to move on with the reality that the scars of the past would not heal overnight. She began to write in a journal, a space where she could express her inner turmoil without fear of judgment. It was a safe place where her emotions could be released, and gradually, she started to feel that she was regaining control of her life. On a particularly difficult night, while she was writing about her insecurities, Kathy received a message from Mark. He invited her for a walk in the park that weekend. With her heart racing, she hesitated. The idea of meeting him again made her anxious. But at the same time, she knew she needed to face this part of her life. On the day of the walk, Kathy felt nervous but determined. She wanted her relationship with Mark to be more than just an echo of what it had been. When they met, the conversation flowed more naturally than they expected. Talking about each other's expectations and fears helped them connect in a new way. However, Kathy knew that rebuilding trust would take time. As they walked, the rain began to fall again, but now it felt like a blessing, washing away the bad memories. Kathy realized that even amidst the new challenges, there was an opportunity to rewrite her story. The life she was beginning to build would not be perfect, but it was a life she was determined to live authentically. And in the end, that was enough. Kathy watched the raindrops trickling down the leaves of the trees as she walked beside Mark. The feeling of being there, amidst nature and the storm, seemed to symbolize the whirlwind of emotions that accompanied her. She still struggled to cope with the consequences of her choices, but there was a lightness in her heart that she hadn't felt in a long time. The encounter with Clara and the therapy sessions helped to open her internal doors, allowing her to breathe again. As they walked, Mark began to share his own insecurities. He talked about how he felt lost amid his own broken heart. Kathy realized that, despite the pain that united them, there was potential to rebuild something new. They were no longer the people they had been before. Now they were in unknown territory, but that also meant they could rediscover each other in a deeper and more honest way. During the walk, Kathy reflected on what it really meant to be successful. She had thought that material wealth would bring happiness, but now she saw that true wealth lay in the relationships she cultivated and the experiences she lived. Open conversations, vulnerability, and the willingness to face challenges together proved to be more valuable than any sum of money she could have had. Life was made up of moments, and those she was living with Mark and Clara were the ones that truly mattered. Over time, Kathy began to apply the lessons she had learned about herself. She realized that she needed to trust her intuition and her decisions more. The insecurity that paralyzed her gradually gave way to a new confidence. When she made a decision, she did so with more clarity, knowing that she didn't need to have all the answers. The simple act of allowing herself to make mistakes and learn from failures became liberating. Her friendship with Clara strengthened as Kathy opened up more. They started to meet more frequently, sharing moments of laughter and tears. Clara became an unconditional support, always ready to listen and offer advice. This unusual friendship helped Kathy realize that she was not alone on her journey. Each conversation, each outpouring of feelings, brought a new light to the path she was taking. Mark also began to notice changes within himself. The pain of betrayal was still present, but he was trying to understand the new reality that was unfolding. The dialogue between them became more sincere, and the vulnerability that had once been feared was now a bridge to mutual understanding. They allowed themselves to be imperfect, and this brought a new depth to their relationship. The friendship that existed between them transformed into something stronger, filled with respect and empathy. The rain stopped, and the sun began to shine timidly through the clouds. Kathy looked up at the sky and smiled. She felt that each challenge she faced had shaped her in a unique way. The scars of the past did not disappear, but they were now part of her story, a story of overcoming and growth. The transformation she was experiencing was palpable, and each day became a new opportunity to reinvent herself. Kathy's life was no longer defined by wealth but by the connections she established. She was learning to value the present, cherishing each hug and each sincere conversation. The journey still had its ups and downs, but now she saw a bright future ahead. The courage to open up, to accept help, and to allow herself to be vulnerable had led her to a place of inner peace. Kathy realized that behind every challenge, there was a lesson. The fear that once paralyzed her was now becoming a drive to grow. And with that, she was ready to face whatever came her way, with a lighter heart and a clearer mind. The path ahead was uncertain, but she was determined to walk it with confidence, knowing that each step brought her closer to being the best version of herself. As they walked, Kathy felt a new tension in the air. It was as if the now clear sky reflected not only the clarity she was seeking but also the clouds of insecurity that still hovered over her heart. The weight of the decisions she needed to make pressed down on her, and the conversation she had with Clara the night before echoed in her mind. Clara had said that sometimes facing the truth is the first step to liberation. Mark stopped walking and looked into Kathy's eyes, as if sensing the internal storm that was consuming her. He asked her what was bothering her, concern evident in his tone. Kathy hesitated, the fear of hurting him again almost paralyzing her. But the truth needed to be spoken. She took a deep breath, remembering the lessons of self-knowledge she had learned. "But I am very grateful for everything we've experienced together, but I need to be honest about how I feel." The words came out of her mouth like a whisper, but the strength behind them was undeniable. "I feel like we are still trapped in our past. I want us to move forward, but I don't know if that's possible between us." Mark looked at her, his features a mix of pain and understanding. "I understand, Kathy. I feel that too. The betrayal is still a shadow within me, and I don't want our friendship, or whatever this is, to be built on lies." He looked down as if searching for the right words on the ground. "But what do you want? What do you really desire?" Kathy felt her heart race. That was what she needed, the permission to be true about her desires. "I want to be happy, and I want you to be happy too. If that means we should go our separate ways, then I accept it. But if there's a possibility for us to build something new, something not based on our failures, I am willing to try." A tear rolled down Mark's face. "I don't want to lose you, but I also don't want us to be trapped in a cycle of pain. I don't know if I can trust again." His words were an echo of the insecurity they both felt. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with emotion. Kathy, sensing the gravity of the moment, decided she couldn't let fear take over. "What if we make a pact? A pact of honesty, of rebuilding. Let's give ourselves a chance." but with the condition that we will always talk about how we feel, even if it hurts." Mark looked at her, his eyes shining with a glimmer of hope. "A pact of honesty. That sounds fair." There was a lightness in his tone that made Kathy believe that maybe, just maybe, they were ready for a new beginning. As they talked, the sun set on the horizon, casting golden rays across the sky. Kathy realized that this moment was not just a conversation. It was a transition, a rite of passage to something new. The darkness of the past still existed, but now she could see a light ahead, a possibility of rebuilding. That promise of honesty carried weight, but also freedom. Kathy felt lighter, as if the chains that had bound her were finally breaking. She had learned the importance of being true to herself and to others, and now she was ready to face any challenge that arose. After their heartfelt conversation, Kathy and Mark's friendship grew stronger. They embraced, a simple gesture but filled with meaning. It was not the end but a new beginning, where vulnerability became an ally instead of an enemy. The rain might have stopped, but the internal storm they both faced was a crucial step on the road to healing. With renewed trust, Kathy realized that true success lay not in possessions but in the relationships she cultivated. She had learned to value what truly mattered: sincerity, friendship, and the courage to open up. Now, with Mark by her side, she was ready to continue her journey of self-discovery and overcoming. Life would still bring challenges, but those moments of honesty and connection were the cornerstones of her new story. And with that, Kathy recognized that, regardless of what happened, she had the inner strength necessary to face the future, with a lighter heart and a renewed spirit. Kathy and Mark stepped back from each other a bit, feeling the weight and lightness of the conversation they had just had. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink, and that natural spectacle seemed to reflect the new hope beginning to blossom in their hearts. With the pact of honesty made, they knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but they were ready to face whatever came. In the following days, life took a new turn. Kathy began to open up more to her friends and family about her feelings. She realized she had carried a burden for too long, and sharing her insecurities helped not only her but also those around her. Her conversations with Clara became deeper. Clara, always the supporter, was delighted to see Kathy's transformation. "You look lighter, as if you've let go of a huge weight," Clara commented over coffee as they enjoyed their snacks. "What happened?" Kathy smiled, recalling her conversation with Mark. "Talk to Mark. We made a pact of honesty. We decided that we need to open up to each other, even if it hurts. It's a new beginning for us." Clara looked at her with admiration. "That's amazing, Kathy. Sometimes the truth is what we need to move forward. I'm so happy for you." Meanwhile, Mark also began to reflect on what he had learned. He allowed himself to feel the pain of betrayal, but now he saw it as part of his growth. Conversations with friends helped him understand that trusting again didn't mean forgetting what had happened, but learning to deal with it. In a meeting with an old friend, he said, "I'm trying to rebuild my life, and I'm learning to be more open. It's a work in progress, but I feel like I'm on the right path." Weeks passed, and the friendship between Kathy and Mark began to flourish. They met more often, not just to talk about feelings but also to share moments of joy. They watched movies, walked together, and even started playing sports. Each laugh and each sincere conversation brought them a little closer, creating a safe space where they could be vulnerable without fear of judgment. One day, while walking in the park, Mark stopped and said, "You know, I've been thinking a lot about the future. I don't know where this will all lead us, but I'm open to exploring. What do you think?" Kathy looked at him, her heart racing. "I think so too. I want to explore, but with the assurance that we will continue to be honest with each other. That is the most important thing." The connection between them deepened, and they both began to dream. Kathy started to think about her own desires, about how she could dedicate more time to her passions. Mark, in turn, was inspired to take up painting again, something he had set aside after the betrayal. They encouraged each other, discussing plans and goals, knowing that those moments of honesty were the foundation of everything. However, not everything was perfect. Sometimes the shadow of the past returned, like a distant echo. In a moment of vulnerability, Mark confessed, "I still get scared that you might get hurt again. I don't want our friendship to become a source of pain." Kathy looked at him with tenderness. "I'm scared too, but that's why we need to keep talking. Honesty protects us. We can face this together." These conversations became essential for both of them, and with each passing day, they realized they were healing, even if slowly. The pain of the past still existed, but it was no longer an insurmountable barrier. It was a reminder of how hard they had fought to get to this point. Kathy and Mark's lives were far from perfect, but they were authentic. They had learned that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but rather of courage. With each step, they were building a future that, although uncertain, was full of possibilities. And more importantly, they were doing it together, with the commitment to remain open and honest, ready to face any storm that might arise. As the months passed, Kathy and Mark became much more than friends. They were partners in their healing journeys, and the honesty they had promised each other transformed into a strong and unbreakable bond. Kathy looked back and realized how many layers of pain she had left behind. The weight of the betrayal that once suffocated her now felt light, as if she were floating in a colorful balloon. Mark, in turn, rediscovered the joy of creating, diving back into painting and expressing his emotions with each brushstroke. Life continued its course, and both were happy, but life, as always, had its surprises. One afternoon, while walking in the park, an unexpected message arrived on Mark's phone. It was a notification from an old friend, revealing an invitation to an art exhibition in the city. Mark's heart raced. It was an opportunity he had been waiting for years, but insecurity quickly took hold of him. What if I'm not good enough? What if people don't like what I create? Kathy noticed the change in his tone and, with affection, said, "Mark, you have already surpassed yourself so much. Don't forget that art is an expression of who you are. It's not about others' approval, but about how you feel when you create." Mark smiled, but doubt still lingered. He decided he would go, but not without the nervousness that accompanied him. On the night of the exhibition, Mark was nervous, but Kathy was by his side, holding his hand and encouraging him. As the show began, he found himself surrounded by people admiring his works. Mark could hardly believe he had come this far. This was the culmination of all the work he had done on himself. The feeling of being seen, of being recognized, filled him in a way he never imagined possible. However, the unexpected happened. During the exhibition, a famous art critic approached him and praised his work. "You have a unique and powerful vision. I would love to write an article about your works," she said with a smile. Mark could hardly respond. His heart raced as if he were dreaming. In that moment, Kathy realized that their journey had transformed them in ways they could never have predicted. Mark not only overcame his fears but also found a new passion and purpose. Kathy, in turn, felt fulfilled for having supported her friend on this journey. Their friendship became an example of how love and honesty can heal deep wounds. As they left the exhibition, Mark, with a sparkle in his eyes, said, "I wouldn't have made it this far without you. You taught me that vulnerability is the key to growth." Kathy smiled, but her expression soon changed when she saw a message on her phone. It was from her ex-partner, asking to meet and talk. Her heart raced. "Mark, I need to talk to you about something," Kathy said, with a mix of relief and anguish. "I received a message from my ex. He wants to meet." The atmosphere became tense. Mark, who had supported her so many times, now felt a knot in his stomach. The future they had begun to build was suddenly threatened. The twist forced them to confront not only what it meant to be together, but also what their pasts still represented. Kathy and Mark knew that this new phase would require more than ever. They needed to decide if they were ready to face this new reality, together or apart. And so, amid uncertainty, their journey continued. The love and friendship they cultivated became the foundation for facing what was to come. And, as they walked under the starry sky, both knew that regardless of what happened, they had transformed. They learned that life is full of twists and turns, but that every step taken with honesty and love is a step in the right direction. Now it's your turn. What challenges have you faced? How have honesty and vulnerability impacted your life? Share your experiences and reflections in the comments. Let's create a supportive and learning community together. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Every interaction helps us bring more content that can touch someone's heart. The time to act is now.